Good evening. Tom O'Neill and members of the O'Neill family, friends and staff of the Speaker, fellow trustees, General Swan, Randy Bumgardner, members of Dad's cabinet and White House staff, and ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a very special welcome to Vice President Dick Cheney and Lynn. We are so happy to have you join us this evening, and welcome. Before we begin tonight's festivities, permit me for a personal moment. Just over a year ago, we met in Statuary Hall to celebrate the unveiling of Dad's Rotunda statue. And what a glorious evening that was. But just a few weeks later, our smiles turned to tears, and Mother passed away. The several days of tributes and farewells to her were indeed sad, but they were also very comforting. And my heartfelt gratitude goes to each of you for your many kindnesses during those days and the months since. Your compassion and your support were and are beyond words. I want to extend a special thanks to President and Mrs. Obama, the White House staff, to Mike Wagner and the Military District of Washington, and our friend Bob Bedecker. But we are particularly grateful to the United States Secret Service, the state and local government enforcement for keeping all of us in the public safe, and for their repose of Mom's casket. Thank you to our foundation trustees and staff, but particularly to Joe Calvaruso for his tireless assistance and friendship, and for the foundation's wonderful newsletter tribute to Mom. Mom would have been so honored by that newsletter. Since her funeral, many people have asked about the services and tributes to Mom, and I have a simple answer. At the conclusion of the days of farewells, a journalist concluded, quote, "Mrs. Ford's funeral services were exquisitely planned, flawlessly conducted, and a splendid series of tributes to an extraordinary woman and First Lady, the likes of whom we will never see again. The farewells were in every respect, simply perfect," end quote. Ladies and gentlemen, I completely agree. The farewells to Mom were indeed perfect, and the people gathered here this evening are all shining examples of why that is so. To each of you for your decades of friendship and loyalty to Mom and Dad, and for your love that you showed and continue to show to both of them, I am forever grateful. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. We're joined this evening by a remarkable man and a close friend of Dad and Mom. For several decades, First Sergeant Alvy Powell performed musical selections for Dad and Mom. You will recall that the mention of Alvy's name would always bring a huge smile to Dad's face, and he would immediately describe the most recent selection Alvy had sung for him. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise, and Sergeant Powell will honor us in singing the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you so much, Sergeant Powell. For over 30 years, friends and colleagues from the Ford presidency, post-presidency, have come together every year. We tell stories, many of which seem to get taller each year, but we pay tribute to Dad and his remarkable legacy. It's a 30-year Washington tradition without equal. And it's something that we continue and plan to sustain for many, many years to come. We're already looking forward to next summer and getting the group together in Newport News, Virginia, as I christen the USS Gerald R. Ford, and we celebrate Dad's centennial birthday. Dad often remarked privately how proud he was of the men and women who served in his cabinet and on the White House staff. Dad viewed each of you as perhaps his greatest legacy. Would those of you who served in Dad's cabinet or on the White House staff please stand? Thank you. But we're also particularly honored to have with us members of the O'Neill family and the staff of Speaker O'Neill. Dad would have been thrilled at this evening's honor of the Speaker, a colleague of whom Dad's pride was boundless. Would the O'Neill family and the Speaker's friends and staff who are with us please stand? At this time, I'd like to invite my brother Steve to come forward and thank you.
Thank you, Susan. God, these O'Neills, they're fun people. I like them. They are fun. I was just talking to, a little earlier, Tip's daughter, Susan. I didn't realize she was at the middle school I went to while I was there, and she was a teacher at my middle school. And if I'd known that, I might have gotten better grades, huh? Yeah, probably not. Yeah, probably not. But I feel like we got new family. These guys, this room is full of Dad's friends from the administration and a lot of colleagues and friends from Grand Rapids. And Tom, I just want to say to you, I feel like we got new family. And thank you very much for coming down here. And we can bring you over to our side. I think we can work with you. So. Listen, I'm going to tell you, Tom, I think you got up early this morning. You and I did a radio interview together and to talk about his dad and this honor. And so we're just thrilled to have you guys here, and it means a lot to us. I do want to say that Jim Cannon, his wife is here, and her two sons. And Jim passed away, many of you know, this last year. And if you guys, where are you sitting? Where are you? Oh, there we go. You weren't at the meeting today, but our trustees meeting, we had a resolution both for your husband Jim and Fred Meyer, who were two great trustees that passed away this last year, and we will get you a copy of that resolution. We miss Jim, and he was just a great favorite of Dad's, and just thank you guys for being here tonight. So thank you very much. I see everybody got their goodie bags. I even got mine. I got a letter from myself to myself. I just want to point out, and you got a copy of the rotunda and the statue and the whole process, and it's wonderful, and that DVD, you'll enjoy that. The other one I want to point out is Black and Blue, and this is a DVD we did last year that has to do with the story of Dad in 1934, the University of Michigan football team with Willis Ward, and what happened on that football team, and the racial lines that were crossed, and the new things that happened with Michigan and Dad's friendship with Willis Ward. And this comes full circle this time because we have a new trustee with us, and that new trustee was brought into the foundation today, and that new trustee is Willis Ward's grandson, Buzz Thomas. So is Buzz, are you here tonight? Buzz, right here, please stand up. This is a great story, and the neat thing about this is the producers, and we worked with them, Joe Calvaruso and I, and Marty, and Elaine Didier's staff, and we worked with them, and this DVD is now being used in the Michigan schools, high schools and middle schools, during Black History Month as a lesson for these young students. So this story has legs, and it's a legacy, and Buzz, we're happy to have you with us, and the circle is complete now, so thank you very much for being here. I'll leave you with one other thought, and then I'm going to bring my brother Mike up here, just because the second half of this night we want it to be about the O'Neill family and not our business here, but the O'Neill family and honoring Tip. We talked about the capital campaign, which is ongoing at the foundation right now. And many of you all that are not trustees were not at the meeting today, but we have, some capital campaign packets that will be at the back door when you're walking out. And if you have any interest in joining us on the campaign, and many of you are friends of Mom and Dad and their legacy. And the campaign is $15 million. We've raised about $11 million with our trustees already. And so if anybody wants to join us, there'll be packets in the back, and we'd be glad to have you join us at whatever level you might think is good. So that's all I have to say, and I'd like to bring up my brother Mike to lead us in prayer.
You know, as my sister Susan shared and Steve shared, some reflections about our parents, that, it just kind of brings up a lot of emotions in my heart and life, and I know for all of you too. And I can't help but think that they are indeed present with us tonight in each of our lives and memories, and just their spirit is with us. And I know they're looking down and, holding hands and just saying, have fun tonight. And this is a beautiful family that we share together as friends and co-workers through all these years. So we have a lot to be thankful for, and I'm going to return thanks for us. So let us pray together. Great God in heaven, we gather this evening with grateful and humble hearts, Grateful and humble for the many blessings which we have received from you. For the gifts of life and health, we give you thanks. For the gifts of liberty and opportunity, which we are offered as Americans, we give you thanks. For the gifts of loving families and good and enduring friendships through the years, we give you thanks. For the gift of the legacy of Gerald and Betty Ford, their leadership and service to our country and to our family, we give you thanks. And for each and every person in our circle this evening who shares in this legacy and who seeks to honor and praise you, we give you thanks. And for the food that we're about to receive, we give you thanks. And we pray that your Spirit would be present with us this evening as we break bread together, as we share memories of days gone by, and as we look ahead to a future that extends your love, your goodness, and your grace to all our fellow men. We pray all this in your holy name. Amen. Enjoy your meal.
Thankful and glad all of you are here. On stage, I've got my brother Mike, my sister Susan, Carla Hill, Tom O'Neill, who is going to accept the award tonight for Tip, his father Tip, and Red Cavaney. So it's interesting. Tom and I were talking at dinner, and I didn't realize this time. He was the youngest lieutenant governor in the country, I believe, at 29 years old. So let me just say a couple words, and then we'll get on with the ceremony here. Dad and, Tom and I were talking, and he would hear stories from his dad about Jerry Ford, and I would hear stories from my dad about Tip O'Neill, and we were comparing stories and their love and passion for golf. And Tom and I, we did a radio interview, and this morning I was saying that they asked, back then, because it seems to be a different era, a different time, why was it that your two fathers got along? And I can answer for my dad in that he had such great respect and admiration for your father and his character and his integrity. But Dad always told us kids, and I think Mike and Susan would tell you the same thing, if you found somebody that you had differences with and you knew that you didn't meet eye to eye, he would tell you to find something you have common ground with. Maybe a football team or a city you once lived in at the same time, and maybe your politics or your ideology was not the same, but you could find some common ground and build a relationship, a friendship off those qualities that you share together. And my dad believed that. He did that. That's how he lived his life, and that's how the relationship with Tip O'Neill started. They had a love of golf. We were talking about golf at dinner, and Dad and Tip loved golf, and they shared a relationship and built a relationship out of that and the respect they had for each other. I want to share with you, before I bring Carla up here and we do the award ceremony, Ms. Cannon, I was reading Dad's book that your husband wrote. Jim wrote a wonderful book about my dad, Time and Chance, years ago, and it had a little thing in here about Tip O'Neill and Dad, and this is out of Jim Cannon's book. And this moment happened right when Dad knew that he was going to be sworn in as president. And they were trying to make the list of people who would be invited to the swearing-in ceremony and the speech afterwards. And my dad wanted it to have many leaders of the Democratic Party at that swearing-in. That was very important to him, that the Democratic leadership in Congress was at that swearing-in ceremony after Nixon resigned. And he sent out an invitation and went to Tip O'Neill, and Tip called Dad back, and he asked my dad were wives invited? And this is the conversation they had. It says, Dad said, wives were not invited, Dad said, but they are now, Tip. And it says, at that moment, O'Neill read a statement he was about to make saying that Congress would cooperate with Ford, but Ford must cooperate with Congress. Dad said, that's fine, Tip. He says, I want to say I will be relying on your advice and good assistance. After a brief silence, O'Neill said, geez, Jerry, isn't this just a wonderful country? Here we can talk on the phone like this, and you and I, we can be friends and be friendly, and 18 months from now, I'll be going around the country kicking your ass. And Dad said, that's a hell of a way to speak to the next president, Tip. And they both laughed. And it was a genuine friendship. And it was a wonderful thing. And, today's politics are a little bit different. They could learn a lesson from those two men, those two great fathers. We talked about our fathers. And we're just glad to have the O'Neill family here to tell you how much Dad cared for your father and how much we respected him. And Carla, I'd like to bring you up now to start the award presentation.
Tonight, as we celebrate President Ford's remarkable legacy of leadership, characterized by his strength of character, diligence, patriotism, sound judgment, and integrity, we are delighted to present the Gerald R. Ford Medal for Distinguished Service to a man whose life was a testament to the traits that we so admire in President Ford. Tip O'Neill began his political life at age 15, campaigning for Al Smith against Herbert Hoover in 1928. He won the congressional seat vacated by Senator-elect John F. Kennedy in 1952 and became House Majority Leader in 1973, a position he held while Gerald Ford was president. He was elected Speaker of the House in 1977 and served in that role until retiring from Congress in 1987. His obituary in the New York Times described him as one of the last and least reconstructed liberals of the cadre of the Republican-era New Deal. Yet, Senator Robert Dole, one of the Speaker's strongest critics on policy grounds, stated, Tip O'Neill would be, and I quote, in history, one of the great political leaders of our time. And Bob Michael, who served as House Minority Leader when Tip O'Neill was Majority Leader, said that in his dealings with Tip O'Neill, partisanship could be set aside and we could be the very best of friends. During an interview in 1975, Tip O'Neill spoke of the fact that he had been playing golf with Gerald Ford for 23 years, and in his words, one of the great features of American politics is that I can differ in my philosophy and still be friends. In 1991, Tip O'Neill received the Presidential Medal of Honor from President George Herbert Walker Bush. And he was, as his obituary noted, a large, joyous, generous man with an ever-present cigar, famous for quips like, all politics are local, take your job seriously, but not yourself. It's easier to run for office than to run an office. And finally, take advantage of good cigars. You don't get much out of your job. Just 1 year ago, we were proud to witness the unveiling of the statue of President Ford in the Capitol Rotunda. Engraved on the right side of the statue's base is a quotation from Tip O'Neill. At the time of the Civil War, he gave us Abraham Lincoln. And at the time of Watergate, he gave us Gerald Ford, the right man at the right time who put our nation back together again. How appropriate it is, as we lament the political gridlock that exists in Washington today, for the Gerald R. Ford Presidential Foundation to honor the memory of a man who is described as an absolute, unrepentant, unreconstructed New Deal Democrat, and who maintained a long and warm friendship with President Ford and so many others as he reached across the political aisle, and that permitted the essential business of our nation to be done. So we are so pleased that his eldest son, Thomas P. O'Neill III, former Lieutenant Governor of Massachusetts, could be with us to accept the award. Red Cavaney, will you read the citation?
Thank you, Carla. On behalf of the Ford family and the Ford Foundation, Thomas P. Tip O'Neill's career of distinguished public service spanned 50 years. He graduated from Boston College in 1936. Tip was first elected to the Massachusetts State House of Representatives that very same year and became the first Democratic Speaker of the Massachusetts House in 1949. In 1952, he was elected to the 83rd Congress of the United States. He went on to be elected to 16 succeeding Congresses during his career. During his years in Congress, he served as the chair of the Select Committee on Campaign Expenditures, the Majority Whip, the Majority Leader, and as Carla had noted, the Speaker of the House of Representatives for the 95th through the 99th Congresses. Tip served as the Speaker of the House from 1977 until his retirement in 1987, making him the second longest-serving Speaker of the House in the United States history and the longest consecutive serving Speaker. Former Speaker of the House Tip O'Neill is a legendary figure, as Carla has noted, in American political history, who built one of the most remarkable political careers of the 20th century. President Ford said in 1994, and I quote, "Tip O'Neill was an outstanding political leader and patriot who always carried the torch for the Congress and the American people." Throughout his long and distinguished career, Thomas P. Tip O'Neill demonstrated the personal and professional qualities exemplified by President Gerald R. Ford: strength of character, diligence, patriotism, sound judgment, and integrity. He is a most worthy recipient of the Gerald R. Ford Medal for Distinguished Public Service. This day, Washington, D.C., June 4th, 2012.
Everybody got a look.
Well, Madam Secretary, thank you, and Susan, Steve, Michael, Red, thanks so very much, everybody. I'm here on behalf of the entire O'Neill family. You're surrounded. But my brother Kip, sisters Rosemary and Susan, we all, Tip and Millie O'Neill's children, want to thank you very much and the Foundation for this Distinguished Public Service Award, this medal, in the name of your dad, Gerald R. Ford. You know, a lot has been written about the lack of civility in politics, not only in Washington, but across America today. And a lot of people have been writing stories about the way it once was. Too often, people are talking about a relationship of another president, Ronald Reagan, and my dad. Let me set the record straight. My father liked Ronald Reagan, but he loved Jerry Ford. These two men had a lot in common, and they had a lot not in common. President Ford was a little more formal than my father's casual nature. Jerry Ford was a great athlete. My father thought he was a great athlete. They played golf together. They sometimes supped together, sometimes dined together, sometimes agreed to disagree. But this is one thing they did agree on, that politics is the art of compromise. And when America needed a vice president, the leaders of both parties knew that they needed somebody who could bring respectability back to the office, because both parties' leadership knew that ultimately one day that vice president would become the president of the United States. Respectability. But just as importantly, what the leaders wanted was somebody that America would like. And that's what they got in Gerald R. Ford. Carla, you said it, the inscription is on the monument at the rotunda in the Capitol. My father really did believe that the 20th century's version of Abraham Lincoln was Jerry Ford. Why? Because he brought respectability to the Oval Office. Why? Because he liked people, and people across America loved him. But he had the ability to give people in America a vision going forward. And he had the ability to lop off the problems of what had gone wrong in government and let people never forget it. Like Jerry Ford, my father loved his God and his family and his school, his politics, and the Congress of the United States. I guarantee you that. People often ask us, all of us O'Neills, how did he become what he was, the liberal that he was? It was because he had a great uncle who was a vagabond, a homeless man. And because of that, they had a white X in front of all the homes that were owned by an O'Neill. And the white X signified that if you were in need of a meal, you got it at that house. If you needed a coat or a bed, you got it and were welcome in that house. Let me say something to you. Steve Ford mentioned black and blue, the CDB. Forgive the age. But you want to read a great story or see a great story about a great man who at a very early age on a college campus understood what the racial divide in America was all about. I'm instructing the O'Neill kids in the audience to go see that movie, because it's not that far-fetched from what your own clan is about. They were great, both of them, distinguished public servants. The Foundation and the family, you honor us by having this medal given to us. Steve and Michael and Susan, it's a great honor, too, to have that bridge of friendship still very much in place. Good evening, everybody, and thanks so very, very much.